I'll tell you that. Sofiac, who are Sofiac? Actually, I can't even remember what the next slide is because there's a bunch in here that just I'm going to flick through because of the time. But what is Sofiac? Sofiac was set up in Quebec. It was set up for Quebec and it was incubated by Quebec with the Ministry of Energy there. And it is the first aggregator for the Canada Infrastructure Bank. Who knows what the Canada Infrastructure Bank is? Or have at least heard of them? All right, couple. Who has heard of Sofiac or the word aggregator? Okay, that's not good. Mike Myers, has anyone heard of Mike Myers?
Here.
You heard of Mike Myers? Right, okay. So at least we know that people have heard of something. Sofiac works on behalf of the Canada Infrastructure Bank. For those majority of people that don't even know what the Canada Infrastructure Bank has been set up specifically to invest in infrastructure projects. But what is of our interest here is they're set up to do energy performance type projects to reduce GHG, heavy decarbonization. And that's what the common goal, the common thread is going to sit between us, you, CIB. They have established, actually they did establish, we established, because I used to sit on the advisory board to the CIB when they were setting up their program. And we found that what their minimum requirements they were setting are unreachable by majority of people. And the majority of people in this room, unless you are the City of Toronto and you're Heather Taylor and you're CFO there and you've got money sort of dropping out the back of your pocket, the majority of municipalities across Canada cannot access that money. You've got to have a project that's at least 40 million. They say 50 million, but I can tell you, if you actually went in with a $40 million project, they're going to talk to you. But it's still going to be 50 million. They are lending great rates. It's subpar, about 0.25 or something like that, which means that their rate at the moment, if you get above 50% GHG reduction, is around 2.5% debt. And it's moving slightly. You also have to get over 50% GHG on your project to be able to get that rate. The minimum entry requirement is 30% GHG, and that is another 3% on top of that. So 5% at the moment. So why was Sofiac created? Sofiac was created because we got frustrated with talking to that brick wall, and they have their own goal. We work with CIB. We are there, as I say, they're aggregator for that. They sit on our board, but we are not federal run. We don't report to Trudeau. They just oversee to make sure their money is safely spent. If you go to the CIB, they will only lend you 80% of your project. That 80% is great terms in debt, and you probably unbeatable in terms even internally within your own department, CFO. But you still have to go and find that extra 20%. And you have to find that 20% as equity. And hopefully you understand the difference between debt and equity. Debt is cheap. You go and buy that, you borrow it for your car, you borrow it for whatever. Equity is an expensive, a more expensive product. It's a more risky product, which is why it's more expensive to invest into a project. I'm not going to teach everybody about debt and equity, so don't worry about that. But that equity portion means that that's going to come in at around 15% and upwards, or you have to go back to square one and ask for money from your CFO. It does not include grant money. So that 20% does not include grant money. That comes off the bottom line of your project. Along comes Sofiac. Sofiac, we have all the same goals. We want to do GHG, we want to do heavy investment in decarbonization. Fantastic. But we're private sector. So what they say and what they're actually trying to do is actually invest money. And what we've done is we've gone to the Canada Infrastructure Bank. We're the only ones that have got this as well. There are 3 other aggregators out there that came along later. And the deal that we got with the CIB, they shut the door on the others. So, but there are other options for you if ours doesn't work that I can tell you about and point you in the right direction. So don't just think Sofiac could be the only solution. So compare back to the CIB, our minimum entry requirement is about $1 million capital project. I say about because it's a low floor. It could be several 100,000s, several 200,000s. You have a portfolio. We'll look at the entire portfolio. We want it to get in aggregate roughly over $1 million. We'll go up to, with a municipality, over $100 million. So that's not an issue. We've got 500 million to spend. We've secured it from the CIB. Even the CIB cannot beat the rate now. We have 1% debt guaranteed from the CIB. That is the cheapest debt on the market. You will not, your CFO will not be able to go and match that, even with corporate bonds or placing a bond through the regions. You're not going to get there. We go and bring in the equity portion. So we bring that forward. The equity portion is coming in at 9.5%. The reason it's only coming in at 9.5 and not 15 to 30 is because it's coming in as a green bond type equity portion. Means they get it. So it's not for the love of the art. They actually get this massive tax break, which means they can bring it to you cheaper. So we cover the finance of the project. Can you just flick?
For sure.
Thank you. So the structure, as it stands at the moment, we have CIB and Fiera Capital both provide our debt. We have our equity as at the top, Desjardins Fondation. They own the fund. We have partners in there. We've got NRCan and we've got the Ministry of Quebec. As of the 4th of July, we launched across Canada. It is so successful in Quebec. We're already in a year's running. We have $1 million worth of pipeline. So we said on the 4th of July, we're going to run this across Canada because why would we not? We increased the fund from 150 to 500 million. So pop the next time. Yeah, let's just pop that one as well. Initially, we were set up to do commercial, industrial, and MERS, multi-use residency projects. That was actually dictated by the CIB of where our money came. They had two different funds. They're public sector, private sector. Ours came from private sector. As of the end of July, we're now able to do public sector. We are looking at municipalities, yeah. So because they saw the need to take that money out and invest it, we were getting approached more and more by the public sector, I'll be honest. Mostly post-secondaries and hospitals. Municipalities, depends on how size, the bigger you are, the slower you seem to move. But, by the way, I'm ex-public sector, so GC, so government. So I know the issue is, not the issue, sorry, the opportunity now is that it's actually available to you. We are talking to a bunch of municipalities, to be honest, over in the prairies, so Saskatchewan and in Alberta. They seem to be latching onto this quicker. Thanks to this forum, we're able to sort of start addressing you as well. FCM is aware of this as well and are co-presenting this where they can, because obviously they're bringing in direct funding. So you do the next one. Right, now let's get to the nuts and bolts. We will supply all the financing from the very pre-feasibility study all the way through the project, through construction, through implementation, through everything you possibly have. We will even build in and pay for your internal advisors. You want to go and get an independent engineer to come and work with you, or you want to come and get Deloitte or something like that to help you structure. We will pay for those through the project. You will not pay for a penny. We started off at risk. So we'll do our initial assessments for you, of your project and everything. We do all that at risk, our risk. You just have to supply us some information that we can do, and we'll do that. We'll put back a business case that you can then take, well, you can take it together or you can then take forward. So you never have to outlay any money. This is particularly, so the couple of ones we're working with in the prairies, they've already, one of them's already started their project. They're actually into retrofitting. They're already in the middle of their retrofitting and they've run out of money. They have a big grant that's coming in at the end of completion, at the end of handover. They've spent their money. They've taken a bridging loan, which they've now finished as well. And now they still haven't finished the project and they're stuck. They cannot borrow any more money. They're up against a headroom. They know this money's coming in. So they've asked Sofiac, we can't in their particular case because actually it's a captive project, not really but we're in that conversation at the moment. But they just don't have the cash flow to get to the grant money. So we finance everything, cover everything, all the costs, everything. That means that when that grant money comes in, at whatever stage, it comes in at the beginning, fantastic, comes in at the end, fantastic, you can then pop that back into the project. Not only that, if we finance the project, because remember I said at the beginning, what we do is actually outcome-based. So our projects, we sit down with you, we work out, what is it you're trying to do? Are you trying to get to net zero? Great. Are you trying to get to 80% net zero by 2030? Great. And then what we do is we structure a package that we will put out to market. We have a qualified bidders list. It's based off the NACAN's bidders list. In fact, it's actually bigger than that because we actually have attracted more people. Together, we've all done all the procurement documents. We've done all the contract documents. Together, just depending on your level of resources internally, we will procure that at our cost. We will procure this and select a bidder based on the outcomes. What that means is we will set, you want to be decarbonized by 2040, whatever it is. We'll set a 15-year contract term, contract period to do the entire project. And what we don't do is, what is the lowest price bid? We set your targets, and then, and as I say, all the documentation is prepared already, it's already done. And then we say, we challenge the private sector, the contractors, to actually do the best project, the most optimal project for you within whatever that agreed term is, whatever you are comfortable with doing. And they present the shopping list as usual. It could be solar, it could be just lighting. Heaven forbid, please, you moved on beyond that. But it could be everything that is the range and is going to save energy and decarbonize. Or we all use the word decarbonize, by the way, sorry. I'm going to take, you guys are the specialists in decarbonization. We're not. We're flippantly using the word decarbonize. In fact, I was on a panel recently at the Retrofit conference, and we've got Van City, we've got CIB, we had Efficiency Capital, we got me. And I was also heaped into this, but fortunately was allowed to clarify. We're all talking decarbonization because that's the buzzword. But all of the projects on all of the financing that is running out there at the moment is actually based on energy savings. We know decarbonization doesn't always mean energy saving. That's why we target the optimal project. The optimal project means we try and balance that as best we can. We might not be able to get you to 100% decarbonization, but what you will see is we can get to 70%, 80%, depending on which province as well. That's another thing. Saskatchewan, Alberta, dirty grids problems for us. So we can actually get to whatever that is. And then we understand the delta as well. And then together we go back and we say, what do you want to do? C-suite, what do you want to do with this gap? Do you want to put money in? Do you want to sort of borrow money? What grant money is available? We help you develop those grants, by the way, as well. And we pile up as much as we possibly can into that project to get you to that closest we can point. Other things, we don't have a 50% GHG reduction entry point. We need to get either 25% energy savings or 25% GHG just to get them into the project, the program, sorry. We are looking for 10-year programs, 10-year projects and about simple payback. The reason that is, we're trying to get to decarbonization. We're trying to get to heavy GHG. We cannot do it in less than 10 years. The people that are out there saying you can, you cannot. So we need to actually, it's 10 years and above. So it's long-term financing. And remember I mentioned, it's only 1% debt from the CIB. We blocked that.
How long have you locked the 1% down for the 500 million, right?
Yes, we have, but internally there's a bit of a nuance from next July. So we have to show the pipeline of 500 million by next July. Otherwise, they have the right to reserve to put it up slightly.
Okay.
Yeah. We have a different structure. So some of you will be familiar with the word EPC or energy performance contract. And you'll all go, you've been bitten. Some of you are a bit younger, so you probably haven't been bitten. Those of us with the grey hair were bitten because energy performance contracts, when they were set up years and years ago, a lot of them went well, but there were some sharks out there. And there were also some sharks that set it up. Our structure is we sit between you and the contractor. So we protect both you and the contractor actually from each other. But you have one throat to choke. It is turnkey. So because we're finance led, I know you're going to go, oh, well, we can't work with finance led. You can actually directly work with us. The word unique is bandied around a lot in Canada, and a lot of consultants will come in and say, oh, we're unique. This model is not just unique to Canada. It is actually unique in the world, because elsewhere in the world, it's run by the governments. A lot of the emerging countries that are working in EPCs set this up directly as the government. So Sofiac is government. Ours is pseudo, because we're private sector, we're just using government money. So it is actually unique. What we do is we work with you. We sign with you, and we sign a shared savings agreement. The money that is brought to the project is non-recourse. So what that means is you own all of the equipment. Once it's all installed, you own everything. We don't take any ownership. We don't want any ownership. We don't want to lean on anything. We take the lot. The only protection we have about you is actually we run a credit rating. You're all public sector. Needless to say, why we're talking public sector, the credit rating you all pass. We have this problem sometimes with industrial and commercial, especially the mid-market. So you don't have a problem with that unless you really go bust.
You have a problem with that, you got bigger issues.
Yeah, exactly. If that's the case, yeah, you should probably not sat in this room yet, crying under your table somewhere. That's our only protection. We run a credit rating. We sign a shared savings agreement with the municipality. So you own all the equipment, but not only that, if we do not make any savings, you do not pay any money. So just say that again. No savings, no payment. We've agreed the payment at the front of the contract. The payment is entirely covered out of the energy savings. So 100% guaranteed, you do not have to ever put your hand in your pocket and take any money. CFO, sorry, gentlemen.
Well, project would be with themselves.
Yep.
So how do the project pays for itself, how to save it, that's how it's working.
So why do they not pay for themselves at the moment?
Well, replacing our foot in 600 days instead of $15,000. So it's not, we'll have
So you've got one pool heating unit. Another reason is often they don't pay for themselves is because they go for too long. It's 15 years. That's ages, that's a long time. As I say to you, as municipalities with portfolios, not an individual heating unit, you actually have a building. You have lots of buildings. When I come back to that optimization, what we look to do is we're not trying to do the lighting or the pool heater we're trying to do with you, thank you very much, but you won't get over $1 million, so you won't even get into the program. So we have to look at bigger projects where things that don't pay actually do become paid, because we do still do some of the low-hanging fruit. Obviously, we have to throw all that in. We will look at solar, we will look at geothermal, we'll look at district energy. We will actually throw everything we possibly can based on the outcomes. And not only that, once we get to a point of procurement, so we'll guarantee even through the steps of the procurement, the minimum standards, and we'll agree it with you at every single step that we expect to hit. So we'll take that initial review at our risk, and we'll put that back as a business case. And we'll say, these are the minimum things. You don't pass, you're not in. But these are the minimum things that we think we're going to hit. If we don't hit those minimum things, you step out, you go, sorry, that's not acceptable, that project that you wanted, Stuart, Sofiac, we'll call it quits. You walk away. And only as we go through those extra steps, the detailed feasibility study, we pay for, all the design study, we pay for, all of that, as we get further and further in, we just refine up that number, that pivot, that energy savings, that decarbonisation, as we get more and more into the project. There's always that benchmark, and you can always step away if we, for some reason, have got it wrong and you drop below that benchmark and walk away.
Stuart, just following up on that, which is like with regards to the net zero Whitby study that was just done, the whole costing study that was done, and then Whitby's using its own capital reserves and funding and revolving fund as their mechanism. But if they, let's just say they weren't going to use anything with regards to the revolving fund, and their council is like, no, we can't use our capital reserves for this type of money, then the Sofiac option would be something that would Sofiac work with the municipality to develop that net zero emission kind of costing study and comprehensive plan, so it's not just on a building, but it's on a portfolio basis?
Yeah, so that's the point, is involve us early. They would never have had to put their hand in their pocket for any of that. So we would actually develop all the solutions with them. Now, something slightly different is when council wants a decarbonisation report. No, we're actually looking at an actual project. We're not here. In fact, a person called Philip Jessup, when I first started working on these projects a long time ago, who we both know used to be chair of the board of CAP, said to me, we have my accent, actually he's US, but he's Canadian really as well. He said, we have this saying in Canada, is if you can't commit, committee. So we have the decarbonisation studies, absolutely. We need that roadmap. They need to be able to see, they need to be able to cut the ribbon and say, hey, we're going there, or hopefully with CAP and people like that, we hold them up to account or hold you up to account when you're not getting that. We're not about that, we're about action. So get the decarbonisation reports done, fine. All of this will fit into it, because here is now the practicality of what's going to fit into that decarbonisation. We're not going to fund a report, we don't care about a report. We're going to fund about the practicalities and what a project will look like. And that will hit decarbonisation areas. It might not get to fully decarb, but it will actually reduce your GHG guaranteed. And there's the point, it's guaranteed. Why, just 1 second. Why would we not, in our thing, we wouldn't last very long. And I said, we stand in between you and your contractor. So our protection is when we've challenged the private sector, we also sign a performance guarantee back-to-back with them. So yours is shared savings, no payment, no gap savings, no payment. But we can't stand that as a risk. So we go after them. So the argument never happens between you. We pay the contractor all the way through the project on a monthly basis, or the apparatus, every single thing. We don't do the yearly look back. We actually do it on a monthly basis, and we measure every single piece of apparatus, and we have it measured by a third-party independent verification. They follow IPMVP. So you will be part of that appointment. We will be part of that appointment. The contractor will be part of that appointment. They're involved at the beginning as well. So they're developing those plans, those measurement plans, based upon the designs. But they come in and they make sure that everybody's kept honest. And if you're not getting any savings, well, obviously that's not good, because clearly you still have to report. But that's not good for us either, because we're not getting any money either. So what we do is we go back to the IPMVP, they've done the baseline, they've now got the measurement, and we will go after the contractor. Contractor will pay us that difference, and they will get in there and fix that project, because they don't want to keep paying us that difference. Two more important points, and I'll come to you soon. Two more important points. Something that will affect you lot directly, something that's going to be really important to you. Presumably, you're all some level of responsible for operational dollars. And your operational dollars is never enough. One of the things when we set this fund up was we asked, why do people not do EPCs? And one of the points was, I'm paying $100 today. I'm going to be paying $100 tomorrow. It's just, today it's 100% to the utility. Tomorrow it's 50 to the utility, 50 to the contractor. So we said, okay, just pay us 85% of our portion. That means you free up internally for operational. You know, when capital versus operational, and they go, oh, you save money, we're going to cash grab, and you just actually, your budget just gets reduced. Now you've just got 15% cash flow internally in operational dollars.
And would you just extend the contract?
So exactly that. So think about it, and it's optional. You don't have to take it, but everybody is taking it for some reason in the public sector. I can't see why. But think of it as you buy a new car and they offer you $1,000 cash back. You never take that because the APR on that uptake is so much. You'd be stupid or desperate to take it. Because we have the interest rate that is at 1% from CIB, it's actually cheaper for your CEO to take that money and go and put it in a piggy bank with some interest and use this money. So it's the question is, do you want a small check or do you want a big check coming back? Small check for the individual piece of apparatus, big check, you're doing a building or a portfolio of buildings. So it's a big, big difference to public sector. The other one, I hate to say it's a big accounting type issue. I'm a corporate finance, I'm not an accountant, just clarify that. I can be boring, but in a different way. The off-balance sheet treatment, you may have heard of this, you may not have heard about this. What it means is, whenever you're going forward with your energy plans and what it is you want to do, what pieces of equipment you want to replace, you're in competition with the capital planning projects over here, the new library, or we need a new roof. By the way, we do roofs as well, but we need a new roof. So this energy savings program over here is in competition. When something is classed as off balance sheet, it means that actually they're not in competition. It's disregarded as far as debt for the city is concerned. So ours, there is no such thing as off balance sheet. This is a big debate that happens in the industry, but ours comes in all of it non-recourse. So we don't own any equipment you do, and subordinated debt. So what that means is that a subordinated debt, you are no longer in competition with those capital programs. It's something that your CFO will debate over, and please don't even try and present it to them. I wouldn't. I'd actually bring in our accountants to sort this out. But when they realize it means, so we're working with Calgary Airport. Calgary Airport has end-of-life facilities. They got their battery storage, their generators. They cannot even get the parts for anymore. They're like 40, 50 years old. They're end of life. But they need to build a new runway. Now, new runway is core business. There is no option. They have to build the new runway. And they don't have the borrowing capacity to do both. They can work with Sofiac. They are working with us because there's no more competition. They can do both. And that's pretty important for municipalities, especially when you don't have a great deal of headroom and you're borrowing and you need to do other things. So that is pretty important for your CFO. I know it might not be at your level, but it will be. I'm going to stop there, but that gentleman was just before you. Sorry. What was your question?
Yeah, I'm just thinking in terms of decarbonizing the building. How would the full asset transfer work?
Question is, how is it going to work with the full decarbonization of a building, and how would this work?
So that's not really a retrofit, that's a refurbishment. So you've got capital projects in there as well.
Yeah.
Depends on the level of intensity of energy used at the existing building. So I'm actually going to take it slightly off to the side, and then I'm going to bring it back to answer your question directly. Is we still need to save energy to be able to do the project. If we get to that 15-year, and say your capital project, we can only get to 80% fully funded, and there's a 20% gap. At that point, you have the option to put in that extra 20%. And when it says full asset transfer, it's kind of a misnomer, and I only just realized that as you said it. It's never our asset. So it's not an asset transfer, it's your asset. So it's your building. All of the equipment that goes into that building at the moment it's installed and commissioned. It's our responsibility. So really, when somebody said asset transfer, they mean once it's commissioned, when we can pass on that responsibility. It's safe for you to take it on. But really, it's all yours. That's the important thing. It's all yours. Your building, all the equipment that's in it, yours. Solar farm out the back, solar's on the roof, all yours, everything. So asset transfer probably is a bit misleading a statement there. It's yours. We don't own anything. We don't lean over anything. That sorry, I think was listening.
I think I missed it. You're saying that this going to Sofiac would not affect our debt ceiling.
Correct.
Going through Sofiac would not affect the municipal debt ceiling. And yes, that is true.
Savings pay back to Sofiac on something that's the thing that we always can't even use the GNI to SCI.
And that's been particularly important with some of the provincial debt here and in Alberta, where they said no more debt. So exactly that. So the way this works is, example, you need $100,000 mortgage. It's 100 million now instead of 2,000. 100,000. Sorry, we're dealing with millions usually. So you have 100,000 mortgage, but you have a car over here that's on hire purchase and it's 20,000. You walk into Scotia with all big smiley face and say, "I need 100,000. Give me this, please." They say, "Ah, well, you got this car over here. That's the energy performance contract. And this is your big debt that we're trying to do. So I'll give you 80,000 because you can't pay it all back." So instead of having, and that's traditional on-balance sheet treatment. So instead of trying to change legislation and argue, and especially public sector accounting standards are different even to something called IFRS, which is the international accounting standard. So we said, what is it actually that people are really bothered about? It's that I want to borrow the 100,000. I don't want to borrow the 80,000 and scrabble around for the other bit because I've got this over here. So what we do is we bring all of that investment in as something called subordinated debt or mezzanine debt. And subordinated actually says it in the title. It means subordinate to any other debt. So this is the bit that counts, is so when the city goes and borrows the money and wants to look at borrowing the money, they look, a bank or a bond is slightly different, but when they go to the bank and you go in for your mortgage, they want to see if you renege on your mortgage and they have to sell the house, or all of your assets get pulled together and they, including the people that you owe money on that car. So what they do is they'll say, well, these guys are entitled to some of that money and those are in front of me are entitled to that money. But because ours is subordinated, we're actually at the back of the bus. So if something goes wrong and all that money is wrong, the bank gets all of their money as if we didn't exist. So it's more the bank will still lend you 100%. The difficulty we have, now they've just lifted it in Alberta, but over here is Fatty Ford, is the provincial ability to, and I don't think it affects the municipalities, it's more the hospitals and the schools, might be wrong.
Is that really a Fanny Ford?
Fatty Ford. Sorry, that's just me.
Sorry. I was like, because I was thinking like, there's a Fannie Mae, but I was wondering if you were making
Oh,
a
not
joke.
Fatty Ford. Oh, no. Well, yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'll get.
Because I thought you were like Fannie Mae, and then now it's a Fanny Ford.
Oh no, I'm just not believing. Stefan true to a Fatty Ford. Sorry. I probably shouldn't say that publicly, but yeah. So Ford's issue of there is no provincial debt, nobody's to incur a provincial debt, is a discussion we can't answer. But as far as that, it doesn't appear on their books. It does appear on the city's books. But what it does is it appears as subordinated debt. And that's the crucial thing is the city has a certain amount of headroom. And that headroom is unaffected when they go to, I know you don't walk into Scotia Bank, but when you go into the bank, Scotia, go into RBC, we've tested this with the banks as well. You can still borrow the same amount of money you could before. Plus it's a service contract, plus it's shared savings is the other issue. It's not an energy performance contract like we've had before in Canada. The CFOs get nice and agitated and like to argue about, well, it's still debt and all this stuff. Yeah, it's still debt, but again, some of the CFOs, if they're liberal, they'll actually buy into that. If they're not, then they'll say that under an energy performance contract doesn't exist, but it's a shared savings agreement. So that's the third part of that. Because it's a shared savings agreement, no energy savings, no payment.
So it's really kind of coming back as recoverable debt, really is what it's coming back. And that's why it doesn't go against the debt ceiling, correct?
Thank you very much, yes.
Okay, all right. Because it's the same thing as the LIC, which is recoverable debt and not paid from the property tax. And then my understanding is that the city's requirements with regards to debt ceilings is all related to what is being paid for from the property tax base and not, I'll leave it to you. You guys handle recoverable debt at City of Toronto quite a bit, right?
Yeah, for years, most of our projects. Then it's like, they 40%, like, they cover that. You continue to find it, all of
Yeah.
solar,
And you use the capital reserves as your pool for that recoverable debt, is that correct?
well, they should bond.
Oh, okay, the bond, so the green bonds are
Yeah.
paid for that now. Gotcha.
They bond, but now we have our payment just this summer, actually extended our payback, interest is 30 years. One of my yes. So we bundle it, we're talking about, we don't really look at the city measures, of sort of PV. I think the majority of times we only look at the, full buildings, so either if it's a new building, if it's net zero, we need to incremental costs, put on that, we go for kind of PGS, these standards, minimum part of net zero. And for when it's existing building that we look at the deep range, so that's either the table itself would be not with lighting or something else, but 10 measures that's in building to get to 30 or whatever. Any sort of and it doesn't go to the that ceiling. Yes. Now, mind you, if we are replacing equipment, if we are replacing equipment that already has state of repair budget assigned for it, then we may combine those two budgets to get a better rate. So typically we would work on the deep retrofits is if we are improving the equipment and they are like, I don't know, $2 million worth of civil repair budget for them. But we only need maybe we need $2 million to make it work within those payback period. Then we just take $2 million and release $1.5 million or something else. We'll definance to do that as a step to repair. So we won't take all of we allow us something more.
And that's so, and we do exactly the same. So that's pretty good now because I used to just when I started this role, prior to that, I was CEO for Energy Services Association Canada. So that report that was done for the City of Toronto about 4 years ago, we did it. And we did that combination of heavy GHG versus heavy energy savings, crashed it together. And there's about 5 projects coming out. They should have been out this year, actually, but they're probably going to come out next year. And they're bundled projects in the tens of millions in terms of the size that should be coming out. That's Josie Cioli and Heather. Now, you two both had questions. Sorry. No, sorry. It's ladies.
Purchasing challenges.
So, really depends on how on the municipality. So direct. Your CFO will just, and most of the procurement departments report to CFOs. Your CFO will just run roughshod over them because we're finance. Guess who wrote the rules? Lawyers and finance. So guess who the ones that actually bypass procurement? Lawyers and finance. Not only that, if they're a little bit nervous, we still have the exception rule. This is something that is not available anywhere else in Canada. So there is always that exception to council process. The way we get round it is, sounds like we're actually sort of working to the side, but the way we get them comfortable is the element that really is the procurement is the solution. You need the technical solution and the best technical solution at the best price. So remember that optimal. So you need that, and we will run that either on your behalf or with you. We'll either give you a report at the end saying here's the results and here's how they compared and all this stuff. All the tender documentation is already developed. We use it's the federal procurement process. You will have no doubt internally in your little procurement departments or big procurement departments, depending on how much control they have over everybody, because some are better than others. Vaughan, my word, they like to run. Who's from Vaughan? Anybody? Yeah, well, I can talk about them. Their procurement department's a nightmare because somehow everybody, you know why, obviously, because of the past. But so what we do is we bring them into the fold. They're part of the procurement. They have their boilerplate shit that they want to put in. We'll put it in. It doesn't matter because our procurement documents are really concentrating on the solution, not all that boilerplate stuff. So we'll work with your procurement department as much as they want to be involved. They can be sat there in the evaluation and make sure that's done. We can put in third-party facilitator if you want, independent facilitator. So we do all of that to abide by public sector procurement. And it's the solution that's done. And it's the solution and the entire package that goes up to council at the end for approval. So yeah, trust me, we can't do it in Quebec for some reason. They have different procurement rules in public sector. So,
Yes, I'm just wondering, will that 400 million criteria go down in the future or will you still adapted?
1 million.
The 100 million,
No, sorry. Our minimum entry is 1 million.
it's 1 million.
Yeah, I say we can go up. Well, we can go
So
up to 500.
The municipality would need to aggregate their projects up to at least 1 million to go into the chain for Sofiac, correct?
Correct. And it's a soft floor. The reason we've got that is because when you add all the cost of financing and everything that goes into it, it becomes slightly disproportionate to the value of the contract. So it becomes less value to you. If your projects are less than that, still talk to us, but probably not for us, but we know everybody else. We'll just say, this is probably the better one, talk to them. So there are other ways of doing it. But it's 1 million. CIB direct, 40, 50. We're not going to compete with the do-it-yourself model. You might have the do-it-yourself model that, everybody says, oh, we can do it better internally. Okay, that's great. There's lots of projects out. So which one are you? You still have your question.
Like, how long does it process-wise develop something like this? Like a 6-month exercise?
How long would be the timeline to develop a plan with Sofiac?
Our longest piece is obviously the DFS, detailed feasibility study. So depending on how much portfolio and everything, when we're put in the private sector, we can do sole source. Everything is open book as well, by the way. Ours, and we insist on the contractor submissions is open book. But in the private sector, they like to negotiate. Let's just say it's a 3 month to do the DFS. You've got from first engagement to close and project being implemented in less than 6 months. You guys, it really depends on you guys. I'm sorry when I say guys, obviously, but it depends on you and your internal departments, your internal approvals, council meetings, all that rubbish. You can usually do all of the pre-contract signature. You can do as a note to council or note to board. Again, it depends on your CEO, and depends on sorry, city manager, depends on your CFO. But you can do it as a note to board with, because there's no commitment, there's no worry about, oh, if this goes wrong, you know, you still have to pay money. So it's not until you get to the actual final contract that you have to get that into council before it's probably. Yeah, it depends on the size, but we're only really dealing with over $1 million, so that's going to be the size of a project. If you had a whole portfolio and you've got a project that's like 20 million, 10 million, you're probably talking maybe up to a year from start to finish and actually getting stages around. But as I said, really comes back to you. We run the procurement a lot faster than your procurement departments as well, just forewarning. We really push it.
I don't
to
think
about-
anyone here would mind that.
we will literally beat them over. I'm sorry about that.
So the $1 million project that a municipality comes to with that proposal, do they have to wait until you have that full of $1 million for the structure?
Oh, no. That's the Sofiac's trying to eliminate that need to aggregate it up to 40 million, right?
Yeah,
That's-
that's our response. We got 500 minutes. We've done.
Yeah.
The over 50% GHG, that's our problem, not yours. We just need to get you over 25 energy or GHG. But that's our risk, not yours. Our portfolio to maintain our 1%, which is why I was saying about July, our portfolio has to show by next July that we are over 50%. I can tell you already because we already started a year ago in Quebec. We're at 75, 80% at the moment. So we're pretty secure. We're going to carry on with our 1%. But that's our risk. You just have to get through that basic entry, and then we'll just increase decarb as much as we can.
And we're ready for procurement if the municipality decides to do their own procurement and only deal with the pricing side.
We can't. Ours is too key. And it's more back to that structure. That's why we can procure together. So if you do your procurement off the side, you may not be actually hitting. We have to go for the outcome-based program. And what municipalities, public sector generally like to do, cheapest price wins. I know you'll have nuances on that. We can't do that. That's not what we do. It's not in our.
And that's because of the energy performance contract that's associated with it, because it's got to be secured.
It has, and we have to have that. We have to pre-qualify that contractor to make sure they provide us that guarantee. Because remember, you're only on the shared savings, you're safe. We're not. So we have to make sure, and we've got Johnson Controls, Honeywell, we've got Ellis Don. They're all the big guys, and they obviously use local talent to actually do the projects. But that's the level of contracting guarantee we go for. Modern Niagara Bird. So